What? What is up, guys? It's Megman Chief Fan here. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a book discussion video. Now, here's what I do with book discussion videos. I talk about books that I haven't talked about before on the channel or I've just briefly brushed over and want to go more in depth with them. Though I'm not going to make any more of these videos for a while because I don't have that many books left that I haven't discussed about after this pile. So, I know. I'm even confused if I even discussed about some of these books too, but oh well, I'm gonna go more in depth here, and yeah, I think I'm just gonna get started, so hope you guys enjoy. Let's get to it. Alright, the first book that I want to brush over is George Orwell's, not 1984, but Animal Farm. I have not talked about Animal Farm at all on this channel, and here's the reason why. I prefer 1984. I know a lot of people love Animal Farm. Think it's the greatest thing on the earth in literature. But personally, I don't think that. I think it's really good. It's probably the best novella ever written, technically. But it's not the greatest thing ever written. It is not like the god of all literary works, in my opinion. It is really good. It's really great, but it does have its faults. It does. I don't know how to describe this book without explaining about the Russian Revolution. I'm not going to go in depth, but this is pretty much the Russian Revolution, but with animals. That's pretty much what it is, guys. That's pretty much what it is. And it is good. It is really good. I like the story that goes along with it because it's the Russian Revolution and history just fascinates me. And I do like, and the characters I know aren't supposed to be really that likable because they're supposed to resemble Lenin and Trotsky and Stalin. But it's just, it's really good, but the problem with this book is how it's written. I love 1984, but the writing in Animal Farm does not resemble the writing that's in 1984. Probably because it's a different type of work, but I don't feel it's as likable of writing as 1984. It's not as descriptive. It isn't as it isn't as detailed. It just is. It's good, and it's only good. It doesn't break any barriers for me or anything, but is Animal Farm still good? Definitely. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. That's really great. But it's not anything that penetrated my top 10 or anything. So Animal Farm by George Orwell, you should still read it if you're one of the few people that hasn't read it, because if you haven't read Animal Farm, what are you doing? You gotta get to it. But it's not my favorite. It's not my number one favorite, but it's still really good. Alright, the next book is probably the last Salinger book that I have to talk about on this channel. It's quite sad. It's Franny and Zoe by Salinger. And even though I like this book, this is probably my least favorite Salinger. Not for the fact of Franny. Franny was fantastic. Oh my god! Franny was just great. It was so great. But that's because it was a lot shorter. I feel like the fact just because Franny was 55 pages long, it worked. It worked. It wasn't a drag-on thing. That's how I felt with Zoe. I did not like this novella. I think, and it breaks my heart because it yet again ruins a author's perfect bibliography, but it really doesn't because Franny saves the entire thing, so it still gets a flat 3 out of 5. Salinger, God, why are you so good? So, it's pretty much Zoe's kind of a connection with another short story that Salinger wrote called Perfect Day for Banana Fish, which is, in my opinion, extremely superior to Zoe. But, like I said, much like Animal Farm, it's still good. I liked it, but it could have been better, especially from Salinger, who's probably he's not really my favorite author because he wrote so little, but he's up there. He is so up there. So Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger, this was my book. this was the next Salinger that I read after Catcher in the Rye, and it wasn't the same. So, I don't know, I think about this book the least out of the Salinger books. I have a cardinal sin. I have not mentioned this book besides my bookshelf tour. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I'm like, ooh, I love this book. But I don't mention it at all. Not even conversations. This is awful because it is a fantastic book. What book is it? It's Catch-22. Why did I not talk about this book before? I don't know. It's a masterpiece. I don't know why. It's not a masterpiece, actually. It's like a borderline masterpiece. There's one thing that I didn't like about this novel that prevents it from being a 5 out of 5, but this, like, half of this book, like, if you took out chunks of this book, half of it would be a 5 out of 5, a lot of it would be actually a 5 out of 5, but there's just certain portions that are just, like, it's good, but it's not amazing. Because I know some people love this book, like, they think this is, like, a comic gold mine. But I don't feel like but unlike a Confederacy of Dunces where I think one part is a gold mine and another part isn't, this one is more definitely a gold mine than something like a Confederacy of Dunces, or even, don't hate me, but Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't get me wrong, I love Hitchhiker's Guide, but this is even better in my opinion. But Catch-22, what is it about? It's about this man named Yossarian who is at war and tries his very best to get war out of his life, leave the army, and go to peace. And he sees all his friends die along with him, and it's just grim, yet hilarious. If you have not read this book, the one thing you should probably know is that this is the king of dark humor in literature. I don't care what anybody says, I don't care how many people throw Kafka in my face, this is the king of dark literature. Fight me. But just Catch-22, I don't know why I haven't talked about this book, why I don't mention this book enough, because it is very good. It is amazing, actually. But, like I said, there was one problem, and I want to address it real quick. The ending. That was such an open-ended ending that I'm gonna be forced to spoil some parts, so spoiler alert, you have been warned. You're just gonna drop Yossarian off at Sweden, and that's it? I want to know what happens after he gets to Sweden. What is happening, guys? What is happening? I know there's a sequel to this book, but I've heard the sequel is crappy, so I'm not even gonna bother with it, but just why? Why give such a great book such an open-ended ending? It was so close to getting a 5 out of 5. Like, this is the book that came closest to getting a 5 out of 5, but didn't. I think another one was Jane Eyre, but I eventually gave that a 5 out of 5. This I can't give a 5 out of 5 to, because the ending, So, that ends the spoilers, but still, read Catch-22. I read it during Thanksgiving, and yeah, I am thankful for this book existing, because Joseph Heller is just a fantastic writer. I think I should read Something Happened one day. I wanted to read more Joseph Heller. Give me requests for Joseph Heller books in the comments below. This next book is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I think I've never talked about this book on this channel, but I don't love this as much as Catch-22, so that's kind of obvious. But I do still really like this book. I think Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is a great book. It is dark, but it also has a really good story about it. And this book, if you're going into this thinking it's a lot like the movie, or not the main Mary Shelley's Frankenstein movie, but just the flat Frankenstein movie, you're going to be severely disappointed, because this is less about like a horror story or a suspense story. It's actually more of a life story of Victor Frankenstein. I think that's his... I swear to God, I keep thinking like, oh no, did I get it wrong? I'm really sure it's Victor Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein. That's what the name is. Get it straight, Graham. So, Frankenstein, I don't really like the letters that are in front of this book. This has the opposite problem as a Catch-22, where I don't really like the beginning of this book, because it's just a bunch of boring letters from, his like cousin or sister, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna visit my sister or cousin." I think it's his cousin, who then was adopted to become his sister. But whoa, siblings, relationships. It just wasn't that interesting. But once you really start to dive into Victor's character, you really get to know him. You really see the great writing style Mary Shelley has obtained to create this great book. So, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I really like it. I think it's a very great book. I think I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's very good, and look at this penguin hardcover. It's gorgeous. I know I should go a little more in depth, but they're nothing compared to these next 2 books. So, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I like it. I like it. I have mentioned these books a few times, especially this first one, but I've never went in depth with them. I've never given them the spotlight on this channel before. I think I gave this first one once because it appeared in my top 10 books, but the second one, there's no excuse to why I haven't discussed about this book. But the first one I do want to touch base with real quick. Everybody knows it. Everybody probably loves it. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. What else do I have to say? It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. But I'm going to go into this real quick. It centers around a place in New York called West Egg, and then there's a man named Nick Carraway who moves into West Egg and has a next door neighbor named Jay Gatsby, who is just this really rich. And they're all really rich because West Egg is a society filled with rich people, and it's just I know that's the worst description of the Great Gatsby ever, but it's really more of about it's really a book about symbolism. You can, the green light, Jay Gatsby as a character and how he resembles the American dream. It's the Great Gatsby. It's the Great Gatsby. What? It's just the Great Gatsby. I am doing an awful job at doing this, at making this thing for this book because it's so good, yet I have nothing to say about it because what's been said about this book has been said before, and I don't want to repeat myself or repeat what other people have said because no! It's just the Great Gatsby. You've read it, you know it, you love it. Yes. And the final book, I have no excuse to why I haven't talked about this book because it's probably from my favorite author of all time, and it's his most famous book. Oh, crap. Oh, there's a paper right there. SlaughterhouseFive by Kurt Vonnegut. It's SlaughterhouseFive, yet again, a book that everybody's talked about, and there's just nothing for me to talk about this book. It's just everybody knows it. It's about a man named Billy Pilgrim, I don't know why I messed up that name, who gets unstuck in time. And he pretty much randomly jumps throughout points in his life, he could jump from before his death to right after his birth, or in between where he's married, and and there's so much that happens in this book, and there's so much that's just packed into this tiny book. It's not really that long, but the pages are huge, but the text is humongous in my edition, which is meant to look like the first edition. But Billy Pilgrim, I don't really think he's a phenomenal character. I think Billy Pilgrim is a good character, but I don't think he's up there Holden Caulfield or Gatsby is one of the best. But what I do love in this story, and the reason why it has a 5 out of 5, is the story. Holy crap! This book, you can tell that Kurt Vonnegut put so much effort, so much passion into this book that it shows. It really shows. Everything everything in this book. And so it goes, Pootie tweets, just every single line in this book, every single theme of this book, the bombing of Dresden. It resembles something in Kurt Vonnegut's mind or in Kurt Vonnegut's life. This book is so autobiographical, it's just... That's one of the reasons why it's so good. It's so packed with Kurt Vonnegut. It's not a book that anybody else could have written. It's a book only Kurt Vonnegut could write. And that's what makes authors special, is if they can write a book that only they can write, and not just some lame airport-like author that can just write a book in a weekend. You could tell that Kurt Vonnegut, even though writing this in I think less than 2 years, he put passion into this book. He really did put passion into this book. And it's part of the reason why it's probably, if I were to go over 10 in my top 10 favorite books of all time, this would be number 11, guys. It's SlaughterhouseFive. That's really all I have to say about it. If you want to go into more depth, try to find somebody else, because you're not going to find it here. So that was the video, guys. I know I haven't made a video in a while, like 9 days or so, but let's just get this out. And also, Happy Easter. I know I'm recording this on Easter, so if you're a Christian, Happy Easter. And if you're a part of any other religion, Happy Sunday. So, anyway, I'm not going to ramble on this anymore. I'm Mega Man Chief Fan, and I'll see you later, guys.